Whenever we hear about tensions around Taiwan, our minds immediately jump to geopolitics, right? We think about warships, diplomatic standoffs. But what if the most important part of that story isn't really about flags or borders? What if it's about the tiny, unbelievably complex engines that run our entire modern world? Today, we're going to pull back that curtain because there's a technological dependency here that is so extreme, it's wild.
So let's just ask it directly. What is the Taiwan issue really about? I mean, beyond the headlines and all the political chatter, what's the one core vulnerability that connects this small island to the phone that's probably in your hand right now, to the car you drive, and even to the stability of the entire global economy? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down.
You see, on the one hand, there's the common view, the one we all see. It's a story of politics, of ideology, but the hidden reality, the part that's honestly much, much bigger and way more critical to our day-to-day lives, is a story of technology and economics. It's a story about a single point of failure for the tech that supports, well, pretty much the whole shebang. All right, so that brings us to our first big idea here, the silicon choke point. This is where we're going to see just how dangerously reliant the entire world has become on one company in one very specific spot on the map.
And that company is TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. And look, this isn't just another tech giant. For what we're talking about today, it is the company. Everything, and I mean everything, revolves around what they can do and what, for now, nobody else on the planet can.
So what's so special about TSMC? Well, it boils down to this: 3nm and 5nm nodes. Now, you don't have to be a tech wizard to get this. Just think of these as the most advanced, the most powerful microchips ever made by humans. These are the literal superpowered brains inside the newest iPhones, the graphics cards that make video games look so real, and the data centers that run our cloud. They're everything.
Okay, now, I want you to just stare at this number for a second. 90%. Just let that sink in. 90% of what? What on earth could be that concentrated in one single place?
This, 90% of those cutting-edge, world-changing chips we just talked about are made by that one company, TSMC. The entire rest of the world, combined, makes up just 10%. That is what a choke point looks like. There is no plan B. There's no easy alternative. It's basically a monopoly on the most important technology on Earth.
So you have to ask, right? What happens if that choke point gets squeezed? Let's move on and talk about that because this is where we see the absolutely devastating global chain reaction. This is when the chips are down.
And the chain reaction? It's terrifyingly simple. It starts with a conflict or some kind of major disruption. Immediately, shipments of these chips, which are totally irreplaceable, they just stop. Almost overnight, the assembly lines at the biggest tech companies in the world would grind to a halt. And from there, the problem explodes from the tech sector out into the entire global market.
And we're not talking about some small-time companies here, right? We're talking Apple, Nvidia, AMD. These are pillars of the modern economy. I mean, suddenly, poof, Apple can't make iPhones. Nvidia can't make the GPUs that are powering the entire AI revolution. AMD can't make the processors for our computers. When the foundations of these pillars crack, the whole building is in trouble. The knock-on effect of all these giants getting hit at once, it's just staggering. These companies are such a huge part of the S&P 500, and because of that, their collapse in production would send massive shockwaves through the financial world. We're talking a potential market crash that would hit pensions, savings, and investments for people all over the globe. So how? How do you even begin to think about a risk this huge, this completely unprecedented? Well, that brings us to our final section, where we get into how savvy investors are looking at this whole situation, and they're using this really fascinating idea called the hair curler event.
The source material we're looking at describes this as an event that could come out of right field. And that's a perfect way to put it, right? It's not the risk you see coming straight at you like a fastball. It's the one that just completely blindsides you, the one most of us aren't even thinking about day to day.
And that brings us to this bit of investor slang, a hair curler event. Yeah, it's a weird name, I know, but what it means is really interesting. It's an event that has a low probability. It might not happen for years, maybe even decades, but its impact, if it does happen, would be absolutely enormous. It's basically the definition of a black swan event, and this whole situation with Taiwan fits that description perfectly.
So, what do you do about a risk like this? Well, the takeaway here is absolutely crucial. The smart strategy isn't trying to predict when a crisis might happen. That's a total guessing game. It's all about preparing for the possibility that it could happen. For companies, that means diversifying supply chains.
For investors, it means protecting yourself from this specific kind of shock. It's all about building resilience for the if.
So all of this, it really leaves us with one final, pretty sobering question. Forget investors for a second, forget companies. Just looking at this incredibly fragile, interconnected system, is the world as a whole actually prepared for a silicon shutdown? When you think back to that 90% choke point we saw, the answer seems painfully clear. And just understanding that reality is the very first step toward facing what might be one of the biggest and most overlooked challenges of our time.